Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Let me dive in here. First of all, I have basically one geopolitical thing here that I want to mention because I know a lot of people are talking about Joe Biden having cancer and all this other stuff. Came across this interesting post that has to do with the individual, again, who wrote this, believing that a lot of these cancer diagnoses are not just real, but perhaps that the kind of cancer that the public is told that the individual has more to do with some kind of a communication taking place between groups of people. And I wouldn't doubt that they would do that. I'll give you a quick example. Back in the day, politicians, particularly those on the left, they would consistently post on X about their dying dogs. And one after another, it would be a dead dog post or a picture of a dog, or they would just randomly send each other pictures of dogs. They don't do that anymore. But it was something that they were again doing back in the day, certainly during the Q drops. That was an interesting time. There was a lot of analysis again as to what that meant. Did it mean that someone had been indicted? Did it mean that someone was going to be indicted? Did it mean that someone had been found guilty of something and it was swept under the rug? Again, was it a communication for a hit job? I mean, people didn't know. But again, it was something that was all coordinated clearly. It was something that was happening at the exact same time among a great deal of them. Elizabeth Warren, Adam Schiff, I mean, it was the lot of them. And at the exact same time, again, people were analyzing those particular posts and trying to dig into what they actually meant. And again, a lot of podcast episodes about it back in the day. I'm not sure that anybody could really arrive at a singular thing, but the point is that they don't do that anymore. So how else do they communicate? What else do they do? Well, of course, there's the James Comey, former FBI director, 8647, and his bullshit story about all of that and how his wife took the photograph and they just randomly came across those shells on the beach. I mean, again, nobody believes that, and no one certainly believes his story. That was clearly arranged by him. The picture was taken by him, and then, of course, he was interviewed by Secret Service. But regarding illnesses, there's this particular post, and I just wanted to read this very quickly. This is what this individual believes and what this individual says. And it's interesting. It's theorizing clearly, but it's interesting nonetheless. It's, sleepydude.substack.com. It says, Biden has cancer, whoopity-doo. Here's what they said, quote, "So Biden has cancer. My first assumption is that it's to kill him off before any reasonable investigation can get off the ground. I mean, the dementia bit is a bit enough of that, though. So why cancer and why now? Well, you know me, I think it's comms. Cancer in comms means corruption. They said even the cabal has to deal with internal corruption of their own corrupt efforts to subvert the government's sole imperative to its people. Just because they are working against cabal interests, however, doesn't mean they are white hats. Black hats frequently fight black hats just as mafias fight mafias. They have turf wars, internal civil wars, and also form alliances. That's all to avoid a battle royale situation. The cabal, quote-unquote, is the only way to avoid pandemonium. They, by necessity, form a loose connection of mafias who are in stalemate power-wise and decide to work together, lest they all go down in a hail of gunfire. Gang violence is what they always resort to when they have a turf dispute, so they carve them out deep and early, taking special care to gatekeep any other mafias from forming in the first place. Still, they continue to try to divest themselves from the gangster, quote-unquote, aesthetic, be it modern thugs or wise guys of the past. They see themselves as something more sophisticated than all that. Even if two gangs agree to a ceasefire, that doesn't prevent internal strife from breaking out into a civil war between brothers. When something like a battle royale goes down, it's always good to not have one of your own turn against you and make deals with the enemy to hand you over. That's why they need to always be on top of any naysayers and saboteurs before it gets to this point. They said when a mafia or another ragtag group of outlaws is facing its own corruption from within, it's called a mutiny. Just like you need to be on top of cancer. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. There are signs. It creeps up on you slowly, primarily as a part of your ineptitude and negligence in managing your affairs. If you're careless and don't make sure your body of goons and underlings are healthy, quote unquote, they will revolt against you, spread disease, and destroy you one piece at a time until you're a frail husk of your former glory. Whether corruption or mutiny, the outcome is the same. Your organization has health problems. Tumors would indicate that a de facto leader has been chosen among the dissidents, and they are banding together, quote unquote, around that figure to take you down from within. Sure, you can remove the tumor, but the cancer may still remain even if the surgery, quote unquote, doesn't go wrong and kills you. Now, this is where they give a rundown of the different kinds of illnesses and what they think it means. It says, what body part denotes what type of internal strife you're undergoing? It says colon. Basically, if they reference anything with colon or colon cancer or whatever, that means getting rid of your shit or evidence, quote unquote. If it's anything with the brain, that means your advisors or brain trust are compromised. If it's anything with the blood, that means family member or bloodline is compromised. Anything with the immune system or lymphatic system, that means that your fixers/enforcers, quote unquote, are compromised. If it's throat or lung related, that equates to speechwriters, campaign staff, mainstream media contacts are compromised. If it's skin related, they say it means public image consultant or publicist, how you look is compromised. If it's testicle ovary, that means children and businesses' legacy are compromised. If it's bone related, this is the deepest secret keepers are compromised. Skeletons in the closet are coming out, often coded alongside dogs, which are known to bury leads, quote unquote. And then finally they write bladder/prostate equals territory holders are compromised, marking your territory in parentheses. He then, of course, says that Biden has prostate cancer, which has spread, becoming bone cancer. So based on that, you're talking about territory holders are compromised, marking your territory. And bone cancer indicates, at least according to this individual, deepest secret keepers are compromised. Skeletons in the closet are coming out. And then, again, there are often other codes associated with that, certainly when it comes to dogs, as this person lays out. They said animals in the wild use piss to mark their territories. If you have problems pissing due to prostate cancer, it means your ability to mark your territory, quote unquote, the goons you've trusted to do so on your behalf are turning against you. Biden's cronies who, quote, held the line for his administration are cutting ties and putting the squeeze on him. No piss equals no new territory. He's a sinking ship and can only get weaker from here on out. Its spreading to the bone indicates that it also involves a number of skeletons Biden once kept in the closet. His core structure, quote unquote, he built his political career on is in jeopardy. His dementia is also coded, which indicates that he has a number of people talking to him, and he can only remember one thing at a time. What could be waved off as him being old and senile and not remembering what he said or being consistent with his policies can be interpreted as many voices, both present and from the past, vying for control over what he says. What gaffe is Joe going to have today depends on who paid the most to put words in his mouth. Now, see, that's the part where I disagree. I think that Joe really is senile. I don't believe for a minute that people are telling him to basically be forgetful or to say a particular thing, and then, he just says it and it doesn't make any sense to anybody else. I think that's legit, but I don't doubt the other communications that are taking place. This is how these people operate. Again, it's military insurgency, counterinsurgency kind of stuff. And this is one of the ways that, of course, they get business done. It goes on here. It says, at any rate, it's a comfortable excuse for when he says something comms-coded that's exceptionally stupid or out of place. When he rambled, saying he was running for senator, brought up politicians from the past who have been out of politics or even dead for years, it was him sending messages to those ready to receive them. Standard cryptography, they said. If you don't have the key, you can't unscramble the message. They said, again, all the crazy mushmouth old man talk is then played off as quote-unquote Sleepy Joe doing what Sleepy Joe does. They then said, what does this mean going forward? Well, why now? Why talk about it now, if at all? If he did have cancer, many estimate he's had it since 2022 at least, and of course he made mention of it himself, sort of again letting it slip. I don't think that was a communication at the time. I think he was diagnosed, and he was openly saying it because he knows that he was diagnosed. But again, it's possible that maybe, I don't know, maybe he wasn't. Who's to say? It goes on, it says, well, it means that he's been trying to stamp out some mutinous efforts since 2022. Quote, oh, that's just Sleepy Joe mumbling through a story. He didn't mean it that way, unquote. Plausible deniability at its best. Ironically, Biden said he was going to cure cancer, quote unquote. Of course, they have no intention of releasing any cures of cancer they're sitting on, but it's not just a campaign lie. He was talking about getting rid of the cancer in the cabal, removing mutinous elements and restoring their plans for a NWO. Anyways, it's culminating in what we see now. What with the hypocritical Her investigation tapes being released, a number of investigations into his auto pen usage, and apparently even subpoenas as part of an investigation as to who was actually leading him around by the nose like a lost puppy. Many fingers are pointing to Obama because of course it would be. Others say Hillary was also whispering in his ear, but seeing how the cabal hates her retarded guts for losing 2016, I doubt it. Jill Biden is also working alongside Hunter Biden for their own best interests, and if you ask me, the two of them are handling his cash flow in addition to Joe's brother, James, who's probably the big cheese, quote-unquote, of the operation, in that he's managing most of their money schemes. Family members are always good to have when you need to funnel money through people and have no one question it. Brothers and sisters are great for that because as opposed to sons, daughters, or spouses, you can go months of not talking to them directly and it not seem out of place. Honestly, it was probably all the above, whispering in his ear in addition to many others. He did eat a lot of ice cream, indulgences, when he campaigned, so it's likely a ton of people had their hand in the cookie jar with a backdoor access to Sleepy Joe's inner council. What happens next, however, is Joe's untimely death, guaranteed to happen before any investigation gets to charges being filed. If Carter was anything to go by, we're looking at a max of 680 days before Joe is dead and buried. Carter in hospice February 18th, 2023. Carter death December 29th, 2024. Total days, 680. That's just a rough estimate. Seeing how Biden and Carter were so in tune, quote unquote, I think it is reasonable. They said, anyways, Biden's time is almost up. If I had to guess, what we currently know is just the start of it. More stuff will come out. And this whole cancer, quote-unquote, thing is to quash any criticism of him as, quote, far-right crazies are bashing on a sick old man, unquote. The cabal is getting ahead of a big drop and announcing what parts of Biden's organization are likely to rat him out first, as the cancerous elements, quote-unquote. That's my take on the comms, unquote. Again, I have no doubt that this is taking place and that things like it are taking place. Again, these same individuals, as you've heard me bring up on the show before, back in the day, and they may still do it, they were using Xbox and PlayStation chat forums within video games to actually communicate. And once the good guys figured this out, they would turn it off in an effort to, of course, scare them and let them know that they were actually, that the good guys were in charge. And this is just one of the backdoor channels that they would use to communicate, but certainly they have to do it out in public also. And some of these messages, I'm certain, have a great deal to do with that. So anyway, it's not always an accident. A lot of this is certainly on purpose, and they can't spill the beans publicly regarding everything that they're doing, so they create all of these coded words and coded language in order to communicate back and forth. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But again, the good guys tend to know what's going on because there's a clear pattern. Again, much like the dog comms, that really doesn't happen anymore. You don't see all these politicians making posts about their dog, that their dog is sick or their dog has cancer or their dog has this illness or that illness or that their dog has died. So again, were the dogs handlers? Were they blackmailers? Were they informants that they had? Was that the part of the dog communication also? I'm not sure. It's possible. But there you go. It's just a perfect example of the level of evil in which they engage in, and they certainly do it. Now, with that aside, let me get into this here. A lot of education-related stuff, and as one might expect, it seems like, again, endless perversions, pedophilia, sex seems to be the flavor of the month here. This was from the Gateway Pundit just the other day, and I reported on this a while back, but I wanted to make mention of it now because this has actually become law. It was titled, Colorado's Democrat Governor Signs Law That Makes It Illegal to Dead Name, Misgender, Transgender People in Certain Places. So here's from the Denver Post and exactly what it said. Colorado law now explicitly protects transgender people from being dead named, quote unquote, or misgendered in certain places under legislation signed into law Friday by Governor Jared Polis. It says passed as House Bill 1312, the new law is formally named for Kelly Loving, a transgender woman who died in 2022 mass shooting at Club Q in Colorado Springs, if that's to be believed. It says the law expands the state's anti-discrimination laws, which applies to settings like workplaces and schools, to include provisions related to using a person's chosen name and referring to them how they wish. It also makes it easier for people to change their gender identity on birth certificates and driver's licenses, and to change their names on marriage licenses. It says, quote, the Kelly Loving Act is a beacon of hope to trans people across the country. It says Z. Williams, whose law firm Bread and Roses supported HB 1213, said Friday, quote, our organizing works. Hope is still alive. To be trans is to know how to struggle. We will not stop this work until every trans person is safe and free. Unquote. Yuck. Absolutely disgusting. I think again, in one of my books, I basically said that once Colorado legalized dope and it became legal, then you would have high teachers teaching in school environments all day long, every day. They could take edibles. They don't even have to smell like weed. They could just, eat gummies and be stoned out of their minds in school buildings. And then, of course, the same would exist with the minors themselves. The adults would give the minors these drugs, and then they would take them, and then everybody's higher than a hippie on a helicopter inside of an actual school, which means what learning is actually taking place? None. Again, I couldn't think at the time of a worse place to go to school than Colorado. And now I think it's official. Not only are drugs legalized, of course, but now all this gender-bending nonsense. That means that no learning is taking place in the state of Colorado whatsoever. It just can't be the case. Everybody's walking around high pretending that they're a cat or a dog with pronouns. And if you don't pretend along with them, well, you could get arrested and fined. I mean, it's just complete upside down world. What is wrong with these people? Everything is wrong with these people, that's what. Now there is this, and I want to make quick mention of this again. It's good news before I get back to some of the local bad news here. Or certainly bad for the school board and bad for the local school district. But anyway, the Take It Down Act passed the other day and was signed into law by Donald Trump and the First Lady. Absolutely fantastic. Again, this had to do with sextortion, basically, and both using AI imagery and even real imagery, and then using it to, again, threaten, extort, blackmail a sexual partner of some kind, or even not. It's possible that the two individuals never even had any kind of communication whatsoever, but they would just, again, threaten the individual with images, with their face plastered on someone else's body in video form or picture form or whatever it is. And then they would push it out to the public, and then, of course, people would believe it. And, of course, it's certainly cyberbullying, as the first term used to be used back in the day. And as one might expect, it's led to people actually killing themselves as a result of these images being passed around by very bad people. So, fortunately, it's now nationwide law and completely against the law, which is good. And that just means, of course, that schools are going to have to engage in all of this and engage in these investigations to some extent, or at the very least pass it off to police. And then, of course, they're going to have to be educated on all of this as well and understand that this is, in fact, against the law, that it's a federal crime. And yeah, we'll see how many schools actually crack down on any of this. But, that's an interesting debate, too, because it stretches right into how much reach should a school environment have over illegality. Again, if illegal behavior takes place off of school grounds, even if they are students inside of the actual building, does the school have any jurisdiction over investigating anything? I mean, technically not. Theoretically, it should be the police that does the investigating, and simply the school or the school district should be the willing party who's allowed to hand over evidence in any investigation. But again, school districts across the United States are going to have to be educated on the Take It Down Act. And, of course, they're going to have to take every serious allegation and every allegation rather seriously, because if they don't, well, it's going to get worse, and it'll certainly get worse for any victims. But again, when it comes to schools acting quickly, regardless of how fast, again, they have to be mandatory reporters in a timely fashion, I don't trust the business. I just don't. Everybody's too afraid. They're too afraid to lose their jobs. They're too afraid to do the right thing. They're too afraid of retribution. They're too afraid of being targeted unprofessionally, clearly, which is retribution, which is against the law, certainly in the state where I live, and this is how these people behave. But either way, there was that, which is, again, a very good thing that that's now law. There was also this. And of course, this should also prove that witch hunts take place specifically when it comes to religious freedom, and successful religious schools are targeted, of course, by godless entities. And of course, the previous administration was without a doubt godless, and they were specifically targeting Grand Canyon University. Now, Grand Canyon University has numerous campuses, including online. Highly successful Christian school. And this was from Fox News, and it was titled, Education Department Rescinds Record $37 million Fine Against Grand Canyon University Wrongly Accused, quote unquote. It says Christian University President welcomes decision, says accusations of misleading doctoral students were without merit. Essentially, the way that it broke down was the doctoral students who were graduating were coming back, apparently, and saying that they didn't have the necessary courses in order to essentially, get the job that they wanted, apparently, and then they were forced to basically take more classes, so they thought that would total somewhere around $10,000 to basically finish up their program. And the university said, yeah, that's not true. So, again, it was probably just a political hit job, certainly a religious one. No merit to the accusations whatsoever. Completely made up, allegedly. And yeah, there you have it. But again, this kind of stuff happens all the time. The more successful a school is, the more likely people are to come after it. In particular, of course, if the bad people, so to speak, and certainly massive NGOs don't have any control over those particular institutions. Not to mention, if memory serves, there was an executive order that was signed by Donald Trump that has to do with revamping the entire accreditation process. Because again, the accreditation process in American education is completely corrupt. It's completely bought and sold by very horrible people. Certainly the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have contributed to those accreditation companies. And then, of course, they set the standards for what constitutes accreditation in one avenue or another, or what subjects need to be taught, or, again, what a university needs to have in place in order to receive the accredited symbol, so to speak, or accredited status. And yeah, the whole thing is just a mess. And like I've said before, This is where the problem of licensure comes into play. When an individual has both a teaching degree or any degree, but they also require a license, why have the degree then? Again, it's just about more control. It's about government or state control over the individual. Again, if all of your degrees don't matter and the only thing that hinges on your employment is a license, it seems a bit absurd. But again, I understand to some extent the flip side of that coin, which of course it's oversight. It's designed, of course, to keep a person's education in place. I mean, you can't take a person's degrees away. They paid for them, they earned them, they allegedly did the work, and they, received a diploma, I guess. But again, even so, the licensure aspect of it is to make sure that bad people get caught and that bad people are held accountable for the things, again, that they are doing or not doing, and that any particular board who oversees licensure is the one that ultimately makes the decision as to whether or not the individual remains employed, is investigated, etc., etc. So it's a sticky situation. We'll see what happens in the future, but again, it doesn't surprise me that bad groups of people, and certainly politicians and prosecutors, law firms, judges, moneylenders, we know who they are, that they would go after a successful private university to some extent, certainly one that has a lot of reach. So there you go. Again, good for Grand Canyon. Okay. Now, speaking of the local school district here in the town where I live, just a couple of updates. Like I mentioned in the last episode, on the day of the previous board meeting this past Thursday, Scotty King, the husband of board member Dawn King, reached out to two board members, Pat Mead and Matt Wyatt, and he warned them over email, and he basically, again, said the following here, and I happen to have a copy of the email. It says, quote, "As a concerned citizen, I have a few cyber vulnerabilities at TSD that I would like to discuss. Please reach out to me and I can elaborate," unquote. And he sent that to Matt Wyatt and Pat Mead at 8:01 a.m. on Thursday, May 15th. Throughout the entire day before the board meeting took place at 7 p.m., neither one of them reached out to him. Time and time again, these board members have screamed and shouted at the tops of their lungs in all these board meetings about how if anybody has a concern, you need to reach out to us. If you have a concern about something, let's make it private and we can discuss it and you can reach out to us and tell us what it is. Because again, if you bring up a cybersecurity issue, then, and you do that publicly, then you're somehow putting somebody in danger, which is completely absurd. The only people who have put anybody in danger, certainly children, is the actual school district itself. So as I said in the last episode, that next Friday morning, Superintendent Ed Thoreau took to the actual website and he openly again ran Scotty King's name through the mud, saying, well, he brought this to our attention, but he didn't bring it to our attention privately. He only mentioned it in a board meeting. That's not true. Ed Thoreau even said in his little memo out again to the whole world, because it's on the actual school's website, district's website rather, that at no point did Scotty King reach out to administration. Well, you're a liar. Again, Superintendent Ed Thoreau gets caught lying all of the time. He's pathological. He lies so often. He must not even know he's lying, nor care. But again, the same email was sent to both Matt Wyatt and Pat Mead, two board members. Again, they got set up and they just got knocked down again for being complete hypocrites. Now there's this, and let me give you a taste of this, and this is absolutely hilarious. You've heard me mention the local rag newspaper in the town where I live. It's called the Oxford Free Press. It absolutely sucks. And the editor of it is a complete moron. He publishes things that he has no business publishing because it's just not true. Again, if he wants to speculate on certain things, that's cool. I'm all for speculation. If he wants to ask questions, which he never does, that would be even better. But he just prints flat out lies. And so here's what he wrote. And again, you have to think of the context of the last board meeting that I played in the last episode and the title of this article. The title of the article goes, Talawanda teachers show up in force as board calls for more civility. Public comment sparks IT response and police report. It says after a year of school board dysfunction at Talawanda, teachers show up in force to a May 15th meeting to show support for the work the district is still doing. Scotty King, a regular commenter, called out password security concerns, which resulted in an IT response. That was the subtitle. Now, here's the funny part. If there's no concern, then why are you changing your technology? Why are you changing your login procedures? I mean, these school board members and the superintendent are making fun of people on the outside of the district, adults, who know more than they do about the systems that the district itself adopts. And then while they make fun of them, they actually fix the thing that is broken that was brought to their attention by the very people they're making fun of. Again, the irony is astounding. And these individuals quite literally contradict themselves in one sentence after another as they speak publicly on the record. They don't even hear themselves talk. So again, the way in which the author here, Sean Scott, mischaracterizes everything is astounding. And in the very first sentence of the actual article, he lies. He says, quote, more than 200 members of the public, many of them teachers, attended the Talawanda Board of Education's most recent meeting May 15th, the biggest crowd in the past year. It wasn't more than 200 members. It was less than 100. You can clearly see it. I mean, I saw a picture of the entire room with people in it. It's less than 100. I don't even think it was 100. It's maybe like 75 tops. It was, I mean, again, it's so small and insignificant, but it's so easily checked and referenced. Why would you lie about that? Again, it's funny in these articles too, because he's attempting to protect the district, but in doing so, he's actually exposing them even more, and he doesn't even seem to know it. Again, it says the district was rocked by controversy this school year, from board member Don King calling for the superintendent's resignation last June to an administrator being put on leave for alleged inappropriate conduct, quote unquote, this month. Matt Likens, co-president of the teachers union at Talawanda, received a standing ovation during public comment after describing how teachers have coped with tensions at a board level. That's a horrible sentence. I don't even know what that means. And no, that's not what Matt Likens was doing. He spent his entire speech making fun of me. That's all. And again, this is the funniest part. Sean Scott brings all this up, and he doesn't bring up anything again. Well, he kind of brings up me. He kind of quotes me a little bit. He doesn't say my name, but it says Likens also referenced a recent allegation of inappropriate conduct by a district administrator, which he said had been seized on, quote unquote, by people who have a desire to watch the district burn. A parent filed a police report regarding alleged inappropriate conduct between the administrator and the parent's child on April 30th, and the administrator was placed on leave May 1st pending an investigation. It says as of May 15th, an investigation by the Oxford Police Department is ongoing. The district already had a no trespassing order against the parent, who is facing a menacing charge in court for an alleged December incident against the administrator. That case goes to trial in June. That paragraph is damning for the administrator who is on leave. I can't believe he'd actually print that. He could have left that out. He leaves my name out of the entire thing, but he admits that the parent, again, walked into the administrator's office in December at the direction of the actual administrator themselves, and then again was charged with menacing against that administrator. Why? What for? What did they know? See, the funny thing about these publications in these small towns is that they are not interested in the truth. They're all puff pieces. They're filled with advertisements, the names of donors. Everybody's licking each other's boots. And that's essentially it. And it's just one puff piece after another. The only time they ever get heated with anything is when it's some left-wing political issue that they really care about, and then they want to dig in a little bit. But when they get caught being stupid, or people that they support get caught being stupid, they never print it. And they certainly don't get detailed. Sean Scott could have read both of my Substacks, probably did, but he's staying away from this. Why? Because he runs cover for the district by and large. And at the exact same time, one of the employees, who is one of the Title IX coordinators and gets the ball rolling for Title IX investigations, ironically enough, is a gal by the name of Stephanie Arney, and she sits on the board of the local newspaper. Again, you've heard me mention that before, but that's a conflict of interest. I'll get back to that in just a minute, but here's where, again, Scotty King gets brought up again. This is amazing that they keep mentioning all of this because it's just making them look worse. It's making the district look worse. It says, district files police report after Scotty King raises security concern. It says, during public comment, Scotty King said he was concerned that the district's formula for generating student ID numbers and passwords was easily hackable. Following the board meeting, the district's information technology department shut down all student and staff accounts, quote, in an overabundance of caution. So said, of course, Superintendent Ed Thoreau wrote in an email to parents and staff the day after the meeting. The district created new logins for students and staff on May 16th, a process which Thoreau wrote would cause issues into the next week. It's the last week of school. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Again, if anybody's ever been in a school environment, been a student in a school environment where you're given an email, or even work in a school environment, you know that basically everybody's email is generally the same. That finding a person's school-related email is not a hard thing to do. The login process can be more difficult and should be more difficult because everybody's passwords shouldn't be nearly the same. The problem is that the passwords and usernames for students are allegedly very similar from one student to the next. They should be unique to that student and that person. Again, it should be something long and complicated, not the person's first name, last name, and then digits or whatever else. Again, that could easily be broken down and, like Scotty King brought up in the meeting, run through algorithms online to narrow down exactly the number of passwords that could possibly belong to a single student. It's not a difficult process, but again, as you've heard me say, there's two massive subjects that people in the school business are never well versed in: the law and technology. Specifically, I should say, the law when it pertains to technology. Of course, sexual law and sexual reporting of, the reporting of sexual abuse and things of that nature, they're not well versed in that either. Because again, by and large, at the teacher education level, they're not taught it. And then upon, again, being employed, they usually don't receive a whole lot of training either. They might get once a year training periodically, but again, everybody pretty much chalks it up to, well, I'm never going to have to experience that, and the likelihood of me reporting something, so heinous would be so slim. The problem is that the technology problems exist within all of these schools, and unfortunately, in the most recent board meeting, which just happened this week, it was a special session meeting, the superintendent just chalked this up to, well, everybody has these problems. And it's just commonplace across all schools in Ohio, and that's just kind of the way that it is, and, don't pay attention to this, and it's not that big a deal. It's a very big deal. It has everything to do with student safety. But as we know, this is not their concern. It goes on. It says, during the meeting, King provided what he said was the formula used to generate student passwords, which he called alarmingly easy to hack. Through brute force techniques, while the formula was not entirely accurate, Thoreau wrote, the district was, quote, greatly concerned that any person community member would attempt to break district security systems, and even more concerned that someone would theorize publicly about how one might do so. He emailed you and told you that he could tell you this privately. He didn't email Ed Thoreau, but he emailed two board members who were begging the public to email them. And they didn't. They didn't respond. It says District Communications Director Holly Hansel confirmed that the IT staff worked through the night May 15th into May 16th to restore the systems with new usernames and passwords prior to the start of the school day. So you admit then that you have a problem, because if you're fixing something, that by definition means it's broken. Thoreau wrote in his statement that King did not contact any administrators regarding his concerns, but King said during public comments that he had emailed board members Pat Mead and Matt Wyatt, both of whom have publicly sparred with Don King about the issue the morning before the board meeting. Yeah, that is what Ed Thoreau wrote, and Ed was lying. Now, Sean would have done well to publish the truth, which is when in fact Scotty King did email them. It says, quote, unauthorized access to sensitive data like grades and personal information can be disruptive throughout our school and harm our community. King said during the meeting, we must act swiftly to protect our students and staff, unquote. Yeah, he's right. That's the whole point. And then, of course, he goes into what else was said in the last board meeting, restrictions regarding Scotty King contacting board members, specifically talking to him face-to-face, I guess. He's still allowed, of course, to speak in board meetings if he wants, but he's not allowed to have any physical contact with him, I guess. Let's see. It goes on, and here's what Sean Scott wrote about the last board meeting again. He said, Mead apologized for calling Scotty King out directly, but added that board members shouldn't refer to their colleagues as fools. Don King used the term at a January meeting, and last month Matt Wyatt referred to members of the public as trifling half-wits and fools. He said trifling people, half-wits and fools. But whatever, details. It says language former school board candidate Mendy Napier called out during public comments this month. Wyatt defended his comments last month, saying he didn't call out anyone by name, but if they reached out, feeling he was referring to them, I can't answer that, quote unquote, he said. It doesn't make any sense. He added that board members should avoid talking over each other at future meetings, another issue that came up during last month's heated meeting. Quote, I hope we can all just turn down the temperature, Rebecca Howard said, the president. Let's behave a little more professionally and focus on the business of the district. We've really veered from that too much, and we need to get back to that. No, what you need to do is you need to start telling the truth. That's what you need to do, but they're not going to. They have a pattern here. Now let me play some audio from the most recent special session meeting. It was interesting. First of all, in this particular meeting, it generally had to do with technology and technology concerns. And again, there was discussion about moving money around. And then at the end, of course, they bring up the business of open records requests and what are they going to do about that. And then, of course, potentially hiring more IT people. They don't even have an IT employee for every single school building, when typically that's what districts have. They have one IT office, one IT person, sometimes two, depending on the size of the building. This district has none. Apparently they have like one guy, two guys. I don't know what it is. I don't know how many employees they have, but they don't have building representatives, which is, that's alarming. Either way, there was one public comment right at the beginning of the meeting, and give this lady a listen. She's spoken at the board meetings before, as has her husband, but she was the only one to speak, and of course there's probably nobody else even in the room. But give her comments a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, Annie Dittman, Hanover Township. I probably should have stood up last week. I'd have had more in attendance, but I probably would have gotten booed. Good evening. I just wanted to express to you that we've been waiting to hear. 1, who is responsible for the glitch on Google Docs? 2, what's been done to ensure it won't happen again? 3, was there a post-mortem review? You're quick to drag names through the mud, threaten to expel children, and repeatedly harp on how bad things were done. Oh, these people were horrible. But yet we have teachers that stand up at every meeting They're very proud to say what they were responsible for and what they did. But for Google Docs, we don't hear who was responsible and why did it happen? What step was skipped? Please be transparent. Mistakes happen, but people in the public eye should take responsibility for the good and for the bad. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I only hope you heard what I said and comprehended it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving into the report of the treasurer.
First of all, I had to leave the cough in. The president of the school board is coughing like that profusely. Now, we know why, and I'm not going to tell her. It's not even worth it. I could hand her the cure on a silver platter for free. I could even tell her or email her, and she won't do it. I've actually done this with other board members in other locations, as you've heard me say on the show. And I get no response back, not a thank you, nothing. And then all I have to do is just tune into the next board meeting and watch it and watch them continuously cough. It's like, so you didn't take my tip then? You didn't take my little suggestion? Okay. No skin off my back. It's fine by me. Anyway, there you have it. Again, that was well said. Mrs. Dittman's, she's articulate. It was well said. They're not going to accept responsibility for any of their actions. It's just not going to happen. It wasn't a glitch. There was no glitch. It was just negligence. They're adopting technology that they don't know how to use. They're not looking at anything from a preventative standpoint. They're not looking at anything from a negligence standpoint. They're not even thinking that all of this information is widely available if they leave their Google Calendar wide open. But yeah, they didn't take any responsibility for anything. In fact, at the end of the meeting, board member Pat Mead attempts to say something like, and he does actually say it, but he said something, he called it an oversight. Sometimes we make mistakes, it was an oversight. It wasn't an oversight. You don't know what you're doing. That's all. You don't know what you're doing. Again, you blindly adopt all of these platforms and all of these programs. You let some people use it some way. You let other people use it another way. And you never look at it through a lens of prevention. Because at the exact same time, again, this is a school district that is worried about more open records requests. They don't like people who dot connect. They don't like people who read. They don't like people who ask questions. They don't like people who look into things. Which by default, what does that mean? What does it mean about the very individuals saying all of that stuff that they don't like those kinds of people? It means that they have everything to hide. That's all. They have everything to hide. Now here in this meeting again, this is where they started to discuss particular things having to do with their IT department and hiring more IT staff. Here's what the little memo on their agenda says. It says, it is recommended that the board approve the hiring of a part-time as-needed staff member to complete public records requests, one assistant IT director, and 2 additional IT staff. It says there will be 1 IT staff member assigned to each school building. The director and assistant director will work on the IT plan, E-rate, safety and security, professional development, budget, mission, vision mission, and overall IT needs. They will also support Nelson Morrow Building and the board administrative office. It says the building IT staff will work on safety, security, staff needs, building needs, and help implement the director and assistant director's vision and mission. Part-time staff member 25 hours to assist the district in the process of public records or other duties as assigned. If you're making a motion for all of this to exist, then you're admitting you have a problem. But they're doing it without admitting they have a problem, or that it was their fault to begin with. First of all, regarding the IT stuff, like I said earlier, every building in America has multiple IT people. Every school building has at least 1. And again, that depends on the size of the building. They typically have 1. So hiring these people shouldn't even be a new thing. This should have already existed. This should have already been in place. On top of that, hiring somebody who's part-time to go through more open records requests, yeah, they should. And again, complaining about open records requests implies you have lots to hide, because they do. I mean, let's face it. They have an alleged pedophile who's been working in their building as a principal for what, over 10 years? And worked in the building for 7 months after CPS found out. And not until, of course, the parent herself 7 months later filed a police report. Honestly, we know what's going on here. It's painfully obvious. Now, remember earlier when I said that these individuals quite literally contradict themselves in the same breath? I want to play a piece of audio from board member Pat Mead and listen to what he says about the business of both adopting more IT employees and hiring somebody to go through open records requests. He actually calls anybody who's asking for open records requests, he calls it harassment. That they're harassing us with open records requests. It's not harassment. People are looking for information. They get to do that. Not to mention, law firms do open records requests for school buildings all of the time, in particular if you're being investigated for something. That happens too. But Pat Mead chalks it up to harassment. And then he openly says, but I understand that people make open records requests and that needs to happen. Which is it then? He can't make up his mind. Give him a listen in 3, 2, 1.
I think I'm going to want more detailed justification on what it is each of these people will do and the need for them. And if we're hiring, it looks to me like you want to get at least one person in every building.
Correct.
Correct. All right. Which I understand. But I know a few months ago we went through some priorities of hires.
Correct.
Now, things have happened since then that make me very sympathetic toward putting someone who's going to help with the harassment of our record request because they're legal and we can't do anything about it. And I, for one, am glad the public can do record requests. And I understand the need for that. And also with the increase in bad actors in the district, the need for maybe another person that would help with security issues makes sense to me. But I guess I want to know if the administrative staff felt having an IT person in their building was more important than bringing back gifted, or some of the other things that were on that list, and then sort of a detailed explanation of why we need a person in each building. I understand the increase in the records request, and I understand sort of an increased need for security. But this still seems like a lot. Those are just my comments. So I will probably vote no. I'll explain why I'm voting no. And look for information next time if it doesn't pass. Help me see which parts I'm okay with.
You hear the contradiction? We're being harassed by open records requests, but I understand that people are allowed to make open records requests. And then, of course, it's this. I mean, again, you can't make this up. And this is where he talks too much and he lets it slide. He lets his motives slip right out of his mouth. He openly says, but we have to do them because they're legal. Which is an implication that he would prefer to never have anybody do an open records request. But don't worry, we're following the law. But if it wasn't for that stupid law and all of this being legal, well, we wouldn't allow it in the first place. We would be more secretive if we could be. That's what he's saying. Again, a person who says that has something to hide. And again, there are no bad actors. No one's trying to hack into your system. That's not happening. What's happening is good people are telling you that your system could easily be hacked because of the ubiquity of everything. But then they use the ubiquity of all of it as their justification for why things are the way that they are. And then they have no problem coming back and saying, well, but we need to hire all these people and we need to beef up our security. So who's right? The people telling you, or your false beliefs in what you think already existed that you thought was fine when in fact isn't? Again, they're incapable of giving credit where credit is due, and they're incapable of accepting responsibility. That's sociopathic. By nature and by definition, that is sociopathic. Now here's what Ed Thoreau, the superintendent, says next. And again, the hypocrisy knows no bounds here. He goes through literally every single flaw, technology flaw, practically, that exists in the district. He just rings them off one after another. He says that they have these smart board things called Clever Touch, which of course in this day and age has a really gross connotation, something along those lines. But anyway, and that they're having problems with those. He says, we have login problems. Okay, who brought that to your attention? He then says, we have door problems. We have problems with the doors, either locking or unlocking or something along those lines. Seems like kind of a big safety measure, does it not? You have locked doors that aren't locking properly? Seems like an issue. The hypocrisy lies in the fact that Dawn King has brought up security measures before in a public board meeting, and she gets scolded by the other board members for bringing it up. As if to say, because she's bringing it up, you're creating a bigger vulnerability and people on the outside to know all of our vulnerabilities, so to speak. And yet Ed Thoreau, the superintendent, just did it. He just said it. He says it in this meeting at the 32-minute mark. I'm not going to play his audio because he has a hard time apparently speaking into the microphone clearly. I mean, you can't even hear him. Not to mention, talk about an IT problem. The IT people don't even know how to turn up the volume on these videos. In order to hear these board meetings, you have to turn the volume up on a computer to its absolute maximum level in order to even get a taste of any of the audio. It's astounding. Again, they don't know what they're doing. In the same little speech, too, the superintendent openly says that he thinks that there are bad actors who are trying to bring down the district. Who are those people? What bad actors are trying to bring down the district? I mean, you're doing a pretty good job of it yourself. You don't need help from the outside, not to mention the simple fact that he would say bad actors, and yet these individuals that they're referring to as bad actors are probably me and Scotty King. We're not trying to bring down your district. You're being told where you're screwing up. And then as it turns out, you're taking the advice to some extent. Clearly because you're proposing hiring more IT people, and now you seem to think that this is an important thing to do. You are as reactive as a tennis player on a tennis court. It's beyond obvious. No one's trying to take anything down. I'd like to get rid of the pedophiles. I would hope anybody would want that. Turns out, not the case. Turns out a lot of people have no problem applauding an alleged pedophile. Serious problem when they have no evidence of one thing or another. But again, I'm going to move on because I'm just going to keep repeating myself. The rampant hypocrisy of these people is on display. It's on display. If anybody can study human behavior and human vernacular and the way that people speak, even intonation, the things that they do combined with the things that they say and then thrown back up against the very things that they're doing, they're contradicting themselves on a constant basis. It is overwhelming. It is exhausting. But again, they're fools. He does say this, which is, again, very revealing, I think. The superintendent brings up artificial intelligence. And he says artificial intelligence is going to get bigger, faster. It's going to encroach more on everything that they're doing in the school building, within the classroom, administration, the whole thing. You bet your ass it is. Yeah, artificial intelligence is a double-edged sword. It can be used both ways, good or evil. And it is being used in both ways, good and evil. You can use artificial intelligence to better manage a school district. They could use artificial intelligence to learn actually what they're doing wrong and what they should be doing. But they don't want to know. Because as you can see by their behavior, they have no problem listening to the very thing that they are screwing up, listening to the solution of that very problem that they created, screaming at everybody that there's no problem, making fun of the people who are bringing to their attention that they have a problem. And then in solving the very problem that they have created that was brought to their attention, they'll still make fun of the very people who brought the actual solution and problem to their attention in the first place. I mean, imagine that conversation with an AI system. If it was just them home alone talking with one of these AI programs online, of which they probably don't even know how to access. I mean, they'd put a gun in their mouths at the end of the thing because they would have this giant conversation with a robot. And the robot would basically be like, yeah, your business sucks, you're running it poorly, you're doing a lot of things wrong, what the hell's the matter with you? And then that would be the end of it. There'd be brains all over the wall. It's too confusing for them. They don't know how to manage this. It's an unmanageable business. I'm going to move on from it for now. Again, regarding the other motions and other things that are taking place, specifically regarding the sexual abuse investigation of a principal at the hands of a principal toward a minor. Here's what I'm going to do with that. I am not going to be commenting on a great deal of it as it moves forward here, because it's reached a particular point where basically I cannot talk about it. The cat's out of the bag, which is good, and I did my job on that, and rightfully so. Of course, the district could have done the same thing to keep parents safe and let everybody know exactly who it was, but I was the one who had to do that, so you're welcome. On top of that, because there are so many moving parts to this, and I'm aware of a great deal, there's I'm not going to speak on it because I really can't. For a great deal of reasons, as you might imagine. It's not because I'm hiding anything that is, I don't know. I'm certainly not being dishonest. That's not it. It's just, it's reached a level of seriousness where I can't speak about it. So I'm just going to leave it at that for now. I will talk about it sometime in the future. I guarantee it. And I will update you when that time comes. So there you go. I'm just going to ask that you kind of, as, I don't know, cliche as it sounds, that the process get respected here. Because it's a very serious process. I assure you that there is corruption, in my humble opinion, and time will tell as to whether or not the right thing happens. But just pray that the right thing happens, and we know what the right thing is on all ends here. So, with that said, I'm going to move on now. Jab-related things, and this is alarming as well. The UK put out a document here, the UK government specifically, the Ministry of Defence. And this is funny because it says the Ministry of Defense on the cover page. It says in partnership with Boondenwire Office for Defence Planning, again out of the UK government. It is titled Human Augmentation, The Dawn of a New Paradigm, a Strategic Implications Project. And then, of course, in the disclaimer, it says, the content of this publication does not represent the official policy or strategy of the UK government, or that of the UK Ministries of Defence. Well, then why would you put your own name on the cover page? Yeah, hypocrites, ladies and gentlemen, they're all over the place. I just wanted to read the foreword of this particular document. It's lengthy, it's 110 pages long, the actual full document itself, but it talks about, again, the symbiosis between man and machine, and how to weaponize particular things. And of course, we know that they've already done that. That's what the COVID shots were all about. But here's the foreword. It's 3 paragraphs. It says, quote, the prospect of using technology to radically enhance human performance has been the subject of intense debate over the last 2 decades. Actually, it's longer than that. It's eugenics and dysgenics as well, which I've been over on the show before. That's also the goal here, specifically dysgenics. But of course, they're using eugenics in a positive light, which it can be a positive light when it comes to enhancing human beings in a healthy, positive way naturally. But unfortunately, they're using this in a negative way. It says some analysts have been pessimistic and cautionary, downplaying just how imminent such technologies are. Other commentators are more optimistic and foresee an impending technological revolution that will radically transform every aspect of our lives. What is certain is that the field of human augmentation has the potential to transform society, security, and defense over the next 30 years. We must begin to understand the implications of these changes and shape them to our advantage now before they are thrust upon us. Technology in warfare has traditionally centered on increasingly sophisticated platforms that people move and fight from, or artifacts that they wear or wield to fight with. Advances in the life sciences and converging developments in related fields are, however, beginning to blur the line between technology and the human. Significant thought has already been given to what this means for artificial intelligence, they say, automation and robotics, but comparatively little time has been given to what this means from a human perspective. This project seeks to address this imbalance so that we can understand the potential of human augmentation and its implications. It wraps up and says the project is a bilateral cooperation between, again, those particular offices, Defense Planning in Germany, and the Development Concept Doctrine Center in the UK. The output from the Strategic Implications Project will be relevant to a wide audience across the defense and security sector. Whilst this is not a scientific publication, it draws extensively on research to provide an overview of where the key opportunities and threats are. Many technologies that have the potential to deliver strategic advantage out to 2050 already exist, and further advances will undoubtedly occur. Our understanding of the technical, ethical, legal, and societal implications of these technologies will be decisive, they say, in how transformative they prove to be for defense. Our potential adversaries will not be governed by the same ethical and legal considerations that we are, and they are already developing human augmentation capabilities. Our key challenges will be establishing advantage in this field without compromising the values and freedoms that underpin our way of life, unquote. And this was signed, that's highly suspicious, that last paragraph, but it's signed by Major General Wolfgang Globlein, director of the, Bundeswehr Office of Defense Planning, and the Major General Daryl Amison, CBE Director, Development Concepts and Doctrine Center. The thing to keep in mind with this is the following, and I'll put this on the website if anybody's wanting to read this or piece this together. Certainly, of course, they arrive at conclusions as well. This has to do not just with weaponry for soldiers, but they have pictures of soldiers in this document dressed up almost like robots and using them essentially almost like stormtroopers, in a sense, from Star Wars. At the exact same time, you have to understand that when a government is creating such a document, they view the people as the enemy. Just like you heard the school district refer to us as bad actors. These bad actors could be hacking into our systems. No, that's not what's going on. Yes, that could happen, but it's far more likely that people telling you about the problem are your so-called bad actors. Just like when government says that citizens are the enemy. They're not calling citizens the enemy, but that's what they mean when they say, well, the enemy could learn more about this if we don't act now. Well, that's the public. So that's really, again, who they're referring to. And they're trying to, again, join robot and human in an effort to ultimately combat us or eliminate us in the process. And again, that's exactly what the COVID shots were. The COVID shots were nanotechnology, designed by government to be used against the people under the guise of being a preventative medicine that just, appeared out of thin air. So the story went. All led by government, all directed by government documentation on how everybody should act, behave, what they should do, all fall in line, and if you don't, well, there's something wrong with you, and you're one of the dissident ones, and therefore we need to get rid of you as quickly as humanly possible and isolate you in a chamber someplace, and we won't let you leave until we cram a Q-tip into your brain. That happened. All of that actually happened. But in this document, they also have an entire section in Part 3 called Ethical Considerations. Again, I find it a bit rich that it's the UK providing so-called ethical considerations when it comes to human augmentation among anything else. It's, again, it's a bit nuts. So anyway, I will put that on my website under the Government Documents tab if you are interested. With that said, one last one here. This shouldn't surprise anybody. This is from Slay News on May 19th. It was titled, Pfizer Scientist Admits COVID Vaccine Was Delayed to Hurt Trump in Presidential Election. Yeah, we are aware. Dr. Philip Dormitzer, Pfizer's global head of vaccines research and development, admitted that, quote, it wasn't a coincidence, unquote, that the company waited until shortly after the 2020 election to announce its experimental injection. Dormitzer suggested that the vaccine was ready before Americans cast votes in 2020, but Pfizer believed the news would help Trump on Election Day. Instead, Pfizer chose to delay the news in the hope that their preferred candidates, former President Joe Biden, would win. Dormitzer's revelations may have been part of an effort by senior Pfizer executives to, quote, deliberately slow down the testing shots, according to a bombshell finding from the House Judiciary Committee investigation. That, of course, was from a while back, but there you go. It says the House Judiciary Committee believes that Dormitzer and other Pfizer executives conspired to affect the 2020 presidential election. Well, here's the fun part. With all of that aside, they just stole it anyway. And I'm not sure, again, that if the shots came out, more people would have voted for Trump if Trump were at the helm while the shots came out. He was talking about the shots, of course, being a thing that were going to come out anyway. So that really didn't play much of a role in the stolen election because it was just stolen. If Pfizer wanted Joe Biden in, it's because Joe Biden did exactly what Joe Biden was told to do. Specifically, of course, also from Pfizer, which was ram the shots down everybody's throats no matter what, make them immovable so that they can't avoid it, specifically in the working environment, and then they won't have a choice. And if they lose their job, too bad, we'll replace them. And of course, if they take the shots, well then good, we got our outcome, which is them sick and them dead. I guarantee I've said that on this show before, but yeah. More of these revelations, again, are being brought to the public. And it's unavoidable, but people are avoiding this. They don't understand, again, that governments want them dead. And that these people within these corporations want the same thing, and that they work hand in hand. But hopefully, again, some of this is changing. And some of this is going to improve in the future. I am optimistic in that regard. We just need accountability. It's the one thing that we are lacking here, is actually watching people go to jail. Or again, be executed for crimes against humanity. We need to know about this. We need to hear about this. This has to happen. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always, and I'll catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.